Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Fireside Chat, the future of marketing 2030, marketing machines and augmented humans. My name is Tom Trainer, Global Head of Marketing at Treasure Data, and I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Tamara McCleary. From helicopter trauma nurse in 1987 to cancer researcher in 1990 to bringing nascent technologies to market in Silicon Valley in the mid-90s, futurist Tamara McCleary is CEO of global tech company Tulium, which harnesses artificial intelligence, machine learning, data, and analytics to drive smart social in the B2B and enterprise space. Tamara also serves as a unique advisor to leading global tech companies, Amazon, Oracle, SAP, Cisco, Dell, IBM, Verizon, Mercer, Marsha McLennan companies, Cognizant, Citrix, and RSA Security. For some quick housekeeping, an on-demand version of this chat will be available immediately after the presentation, so share with your friends and colleagues. And feel free to click and download the attachments that are below your screen. And lastly, we'd love to hear from you. This will be very interactive, and if you have any questions during or after today's session, please submit them below, and we'll do our best to answer some of them. So let's get started. So, Tamara, as a futurist and CEO of a global digital marketing agency, how has our experience moving through a global pandemic changed the trajectory of technological advancement?
It's a great question because, thanks to the coronavirus, the future may arrive earlier than we actually anticipated, because we're seeing increases, right, in spend on technology, research and development from harnessing AI and machine learning in treatment modalities, right? Think of Corona, and vaccine investigation to an uptake in automation, digital transformation, since COVID-19 really pretty much forced our hands, didn't it, to increase reliance upon machines and technology to get the jobs done that vulnerable, virus-prone humans just couldn't manage. And so, living through this really unexpected time, surviving a global pandemic has created a new push for technology and adoption of that tech. We're seeing an explosion, right, of spend with organizations on AI, on automation, for a lot of reasons that, even in supply chain, if we're going to talk about supply chain and not being able to have critical supplies on hand at grocery stores and things, it really behooves us to know that a lot of these manufacturing companies, when they had to shut down completely because of virus, that automation all of a sudden became a necessity. So even in marketing, I think chatbots became undeniably helpful when there wasn't a workforce, to be able to answer people. And it created a way in which people could still be communicated with and not disrupted because of, global pandemic. And so this experience, we've learned a few things, and we are continuing to learn. But one of the things, to your point, Tom, as I think we're learning, that we are incredibly dependent upon technology, and the adoption rate has sped up, which, is moving that future trajectory, because the human workforce is vulnerable. And that's what we've been living into. And, look, we're even learning new behaviors right now and a new lifestyle, right? From reskilling ourselves, from, working from home, and the office as the central hub or management center has declined in importance. Millions have been working from home. And we even see new business opportunities focused on creating more efficient remote work processes. So, how we always talk about innovation and emerging technologies will create new jobs and new ideas. Well, case in point, look at all of these new businesses created and new opportunities created around all these people needing to work from home. So, right. If we look at the emergence of new products and services that have been developed to empower a remote workforce, all of these changes are impacting the trajectory of innovation and tech adoption and accelerating that timeline I talk about. And it's really just a simple supply and demand scenario where money is being put behind new tech, businesses feeling not only the opportunity cost, but also the cost of failure to adopt technology and automation, automation processes. So it's a race for tech companies to harness the opportunities that have been presented through our experience of this post-pandemic existence. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's a very compelling argument. That leads to the second question is, you've been speaking around the world on nascent technologies and the human-machine partnership. So how has this pandemic affected what you've been warning businesses about for the past decade?
Oh, God, wow. What it's done is it's reminded us in the most exquisite way just how vulnerable and not invincible we human beings are, and how much we truly do rely on our software and our machine counterparts to cover for us when we aren't available, when we need protection from things that can harm us. Just think of how overnight everyone had to rely on video conferencing to continue to do business. I think more companies are more open to looking at how to reach customers, using technology. And marketing leadership has to embrace the way in which technologies are evolving and how reliant the customer is becoming on technologies. Take Siri, Alexa, and Google, for instance, in our reliance upon these digital assistants. I had to disarm mine because I didn't want it to go off while we were talking.
Yeah.
But our reliance on these things, these digital assistants, even though they're rather primitive, at best currently, right? It's, if you look at your digital assistant right now, it's pretty much a call and response system. Ask a question, get an answer, maybe sometimes not the answer that you were even asking. Right. You could set a timer and you can do, these types of things, but it's still in its infancy. But as this technology becomes more advanced, these digital assistants will actually talk to us without being asked, right? Totally independent. They'll become our proxy. They'll shop for us completely independent without us and without us telling them to do so. They'll price compare, they'll evaluate recommendations at processing speeds we could never achieve by reading, such things like individual Amazon reviews, right? So it will just know and take care of and do things for us. And so when it becomes that exquisite, this, Tom, is where I think people become really dependent on their digital assistant and close to it, right? Because we when we depend on things, we don't mean to, but we human beings like to project a lot of human qualities onto everything from technology. Do you have one of those Roombas, those vacuum cleaners?
I don't have a Roomba yet, no.
Oh my God, there was this cool study saying that people who have Roombas, even when the Roomba gets stuck like under a chair or somewhere, they want to go help it. They want to help out the poor Roomba. And, we do this with our pets too. Oh, he's embarrassed. Oh, he's shy. How do we know that? We just say that. But anyway, I digress. But I really want people to think about the fact when we talk about these digital assistants, Tom, when we talk about the future of marketing, I'm not talking about the current capability of these types of devices. What I'm talking about is where we're headed, where we're going, and what we're going to see these be able to do as technology, continues to evolve.
Yep, no, it makes complete sense. If we combine that with marketing, let's talk about marketing for a second. In your projection of the future, you talk about marketers needing to focus on marketing to digital assistants, such as Alexa, Siri, Google, and Cortana. And you talk about a future of hyper-personalization. Aren't we already doing this to some degree, and don't we already have hyper-personalized marketing?
I love that you asked that question, because I get asked that question all the time. Like, well, Tamara, aren't we already personalized? No, I mean, we are, but again, it's not very exquisite. So think about this. We're in our marketing infancy around personalized marketing, and it's not hyper-personalization. We are not there yet. We don't have the technology, frankly, currently today for a hyper-personalized and immersive experience, but those technologies are coming soon.
Okay. Can you walk through some of the innovative technologies coming within the next 10 years that support this kind of personalization and immersive experiences, especially?
Absolutely. So, what I'd like to walk you through is, first of all, open up your imagination, because some of these things, you have to use that type of vision in order to see that this isn't here today, but it's coming. So for instance, we talked about hyper-personalization not being here yet because we just don't have the capability. In fact, the reason why it's not hyper-personalized, I don't know if you have any kids that use some of your accounts, like, our kids use my Amazon account. So I'm getting retargeted ads for things I'm not interested in. So that's not a hyper-personalized experience, is it? Well, when we get to a place where technology has evolved to the point of knowing who is who, and then being able to retarget to me ads that are personalized to me, not someone who may have used my account, such as one of my kids. So with this next step, what I've talked about marketers needing to do is to look at, instead of brands owning the relationship with their target market, they won't. Who's going to own the relationship? Well, it's going to be those personal digital assistants that own the relationship and actually become the gatekeeper, right? So when you want to know something or you want to shop for something, it's your digital assistant that's going to be bringing to your attention the best choices. Well, how are brands going to make sure that, say, that Alexa is going to make sure that they bring up their brand? Well, you're going to have to market to those platforms that house the Alexa, so Amazon, right? So marketers are going to have to start becoming incredibly exquisite at marketing to these platforms, who then have the digital assistants that are those gatekeepers for human beings. And we're going to see continued huge explosion in artificial intelligence. And I hope we get to talk about that too, because there's a lot of implications with creating, actually, if we get there, if we actually succeed in creating a super intelligent AI, what does that mean? So we're going to see more of that. Look at where we've come so far in 2020, and just look even 10 years ago. So it's not unheard of that by 2030, we're going to be quite surprised with what we have. We will have, personalized voice assistants. So much more of a vocal interface, not so much, you're not going to have to actually do so much. It'll be much more of a vocal interface. And I know you and I, on a previous conversation, we even talked about how, and you may be even asking me this later, I don't know, so I could be jumping the gun, but we talked about how 5G, right, is so intertwined with these advancements that I'm talking about, because with 5G technology, we have those increased computing speeds that we need to be able to realize these things, and the decreased latency period for it to really have an impact. So for instance, another one of those things on my timeline is the tactile internet. And the tactile internet will absolutely require these decreased latency periods in order for us to feel that touch sensation. Right. So imagine, what does tactile internet mean? Well, gosh, Tom, it can mean that you and I could be having this conversation, and instead of it being a flat screen where I see you and a flat screen where you see me, it'll be much more three-dimensional, right? We're going to be able to, well, we shouldn't shake hands anymore after COVID, but
right?
But maybe I could reach through and I could actually, feel that a coffee cup or something. But the tactile internet really demands those hyper speeds and decreased latency to be able to move that technology along. But can you imagine the societal implications if you could put on an augmented reality headset and not just see those things in your environment, but feel them? Imagine what it would do to relationships even, right? So there'll even be societal disruption with what constitutes, cheating in a relationship if it's with an AI, but you can touch, you can feel, you can smell, you can taste. It's going to bring all kinds of new interesting dilemmas into our existence. I talk a lot about the augmented reality mobile contact lenses. So instead of having to put on that, bulky old headset, have you ever put one of those on, Tom? Have you ever played any of the AR VR?
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the, I would say more unattractive pieces, especially for, I won't generalize across the entire population of females, but I don't think we love having that giant headset on. But imagine being able to pop in your contacts, right? And now you have this augmented experience. combined with that tactile internet, where you can touch objects and things in your space, that to me, it's just mind blowing, the different things that we could really do. And this is why we look at, there's going to be businesses and products and services that are not in existence today that will become in existence as new technology evolves. You know, you can imagine all the business opportunities with that. Just think virtual conferences and meetings. Right now, okay, we've been talking about this for a long time now, but after COVID-19, all those conferences, those in-person conferences shut down. And so now you're seeing this, iteration of a, virtual conference that, I don't know, I've been to a few of them. I don't know if you have. I've even keynoted at a couple virtually. It's not the same experience at all. And in fact, the conferences got real short, right? So like a 4-day conference now became a half day. Yeah. And because people's attention spans are pretty short, and you don't have that tactile stimulation, sights, sounds, the mixers and things that really keep people going at these live events. But imagine if we have that virtual conference ability with augmented reality in this tactile internet to actually be somewhere without being somewhere.
Right.
And I'm not trying to blow your mind, but it's coming. It's definitely possible. But imagine what a game changer that'll be, where you never have to leave the house, but you can still feel connected to other human beings. And, you look at the psychological impact of COVID-19 on people having to work from home. And I know you've read these things too. I've been reading in, Harvard Business Review and all these psychologists talking about how for a lot of people, especially people who live alone, the social distancing and the shelter in place had significant impacts and continue to have significant psychological impacts. But if you could leave without leaving, safely interact with people, imagine how that might change this entire experience for everyone, with the shelter in place at home. But, I go all the way through, me and all of my tech that I talk about telepathy and neural implants and, machine to machine marketing. We will eventually get to where machines operate so quickly and these algorithms iterate on themselves so, rapid fire that it will be machines really having to market to other machines, right? Because we humans are a little bit slower. And then of course, ta-da, I end with my giant talk about an augmented human race. And, I like to, I don't know what you think, Tom, but I thought I would pose this to you and everyone who's watching. And that is, if you had a concussion where you lost your memory or you lost your ability to hold on to memories, or you had a disease process that affected your memory, cancer treatments that maybe affected your memory, such as radiation and brain cancer, or, you or a loved one were diagnosed with, say, Alzheimer's disease. If you were given the opportunity to take a neural implant where you would not lose your memories, you would not lose your sense of self, and you would not lose your cognitive abilities, would you take it? I'm just curious to know what you think. Would you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it would be great to dependably hold on to those memories that seem sometimes to fade away or be fleeting. So yeah, for sure.
Well, and you think, is there anything scarier than feeling like, you might lose yourself, or your ability to compete, your ability to stay ahead? And oh gosh, so with all the medical technologies and rejuvenation medicine, and we're looking at extending our lives, it's not like we'll be retiring anytime soon. And we'll definitely have to keep working if we like to enjoy our current level of living. But, at the same time, if you look at that, you would need some sort of brain augmentation, because over time, we don't have the same ability, to hold on to information. So I think it's an interesting dilemma, because when you talk about future technologies, we're really talking about a lot of ethical dilemmas. And it's interesting, just like with autonomous vehicles, people have a lot of they have a lot of opinions about what it should be until it affects them personally or a family member. Then all of a sudden they change their mind. They're like, well, okay, in this instance, I'd go ahead and do it. But the minute, Tom, the minute one person takes a neural implant and augments themselves is the minute none of us have a choice if we want to continue to stay competitive in business. So choice will not be ours. It will be whether or not we can keep up or not, and whether or not we have the monetary means with which to keep up, which, brings in all of those social issues too, which is a wider divide between the haves and the have-nots, the augmented and the unaugmented. How do the augmented people treat unaugmented people? And it'll be interesting because I think we'll be creating a whole new race of people when we go to augmentation. And so I think that's where we're going to be having a lot of uprisings and struggles if we're not really, conscious of what we're doing here, but we are creating a greater divide because not everybody has the money or the access to be able to get their neural implant, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I could see where the physical and neural enhancements can definitely, create that divide. Just one more way. And all of the technology advances you talk about and have been talking about, I can really see how that pandemic is really, putting them front and center and speeding them up. I mean, that's definitely mind blowing as far as where we're going to go in the future. So talk more about the augmented human race, and please explain that, and then talk about that, and also the hyper personalization. Is there anything else we haven't thought about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, think about this. Like, we all, okay, so just to be transparent, we're already augmented, right? So we all carry with us a supercomputer in our pockets and purses, and our kids ask it questions. We ask it questions. How many times a day do you look something up to get the answer? So imagine not having that. We can't. I mean, how many of us want to leave without our phone or live without the phone during the day? So it's, we are already augmented. Resistance is futile. We have been assimilated. And so, it's really taking it to that next level. It's, instead of augmentation being out here in a device such as a phone where we, can access it, it's about now taking that and putting it inside. And is that a neural implant? What kind of chip is that? And then take away the time, the speed difference to having to type in your question, look up for the various answers. If it's implanted, boom, you instant intelligence, right? Instant answers all the time. But what I caution people is that, intellect does not equal happiness, nor does it equal emotional intelligence. And so you can be wickedly brilliant and tapped into the digital sphere and have all knowledge, but it doesn't mean you're going to be happy. And when we look at human beings have different behaviors. So it doesn't mean you'll make wise decisions with all that knowledge that you have. So when we look at the future with an augmented race, we have to look at what is it that we're really unleashing on humanity, and how are we redefining what it means to be human? And with this increased ability with technology, to your question about hyper personalization, it will just be nanoseconds to being able to have products and services marketed your way. Even if you look at some of those sci-fi movies where you're walking down the street and there's these billboards up there, but what I see it more being is those augmented reality contact lenses, not giant billboards. And you might be walking by someplace that has your favorite soft drink, or your biometric device knows that your blood sugar is low or you're hungry, it's time to eat. And so now you're being marketed to about favorite foods that happen to be right nearby. So your biometrics will also play a part in this hyper personalization. because all will be known about you. Right now, you can't even get away right now. You're tracked. Oh my gosh, have you heard about, Tom, have you heard about those companies that are microchipping their employees?
I have seen a little bit of that voluntarily, yes. What do you think?
No, I don't want to be microchipped, but I mean, it was, so it was, who's it? Oh, Three Square Market actually microchipped their administrative team first. Can you imagine that? Probably to show the employees it's perfectly safe. But they were saying that this microchip allowed employees to get food, at these automatic vending machines and things like that without even having to make any sort of financial transaction. But I wouldn't like that at all. But I do believe, we could go to that kind of society. Look at smart city solutions, and your car's tracking you all the time. Your phone, all those apps tracking you all the time. So,
Or
yeah, I mean,
right?
You cannot get away. You will be found. And so there's good and bad to this, right? There's a really high light side, where we can find people who are missing, and we could locate children that are missing. There's all kinds of high sides to this, but the low side is, what if you don't want to be found? So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see how the evolution of like cellular technology was, simple flip phone. Now my kids feel like augmented humans because they got the AirPods in. They're not listening to me. They're actually more engaged in something else that's going on that I have no idea. And then I'm sure
they're listening to music. How do they do that with one ear? I can't do that.
Right.
Like I have to have it both. But yeah, I know. I totally get it because we've got kids too. But somebody had put a comment in here, so I was trying to read.
I can read the question for you. So
okay, good.
It's it says, this is very interesting. How does this tie with the XR? And what kind of human interface would be required to go beyond visual and audio immersive experience to non-physical senses? Is this where neural network tech such as Neuralink comes in? So it's kind of the interface, I think, of
whoever this is. I hope we're connected on LinkedIn, because I like those kind of conversations. That is definitely deep and juicy, and it's riddled with a lot of layers. And they don't leave a name. I want you to connect with me on LinkedIn, but it's definitely beyond the scope of what we could talk about on our future marketing piece. But the super short abbreviated Cliff Notes answer is, yeah, I agree with the author of this question that this is where the neural network technologies such as Neuralink are going to play a piece in this. Absolutely. Brilliant mind just wrote that question. So that's a good question.
And thinking about your earlier comment about, kind of relationships, and there was that thing in Second Life, right? Where people had the Second Life wife and, the Second Life kind of software. And also, you're talking about the conventions are not quite, what it feels like to go to a convention. So yeah, I can see where the evolution of those couple of things is going to go even further, especially in the current times. So that's very interesting to me.
Well, we've even had an engineer already marry his AI. So, but he was kind of funny. He was talking about he's so sick of his parents always asking him when he's going to get married. So he went ahead and married his invention. But and you gotta love his sense of humor. But I do think that that's what we're looking at. We're looking at that people will have relationships with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will have rights. I mean, think about it. Right now, if you think about it, AI it's the company's IP. Well, companies have rights, right? So, I had a great conversation several years ago with Tim Berners-Lee.
Mm-hmm.
He's he discovered the World Wide Web, and such a fascinating, just wicked smart individual. And I had asked him about, the singularity. How long away do you think it is? Because I'm also a Ray Kurzweil fan, and have all his books too. I think I even have one on my desk here. Yeah, I do. I told you this is what a geek I am, right? So, I asked him, what do you think? Because, Ray even mentions like 2050, but one thing that Tim Berners-Lee said that I thought was real smart was he's like, think about it this way with the cloud. we are all already tethered to the crowd, right? We can't live without it. We all have a leash to the,
Right. No,
we're tethered. We have a leash,
sure.
right? We're in service. So he's like, think about this. If we're already tethered to the cloud, we're already dependent on technology. Technology really has completely interwoven into the very existence of humanity now. And we certainly couldn't have survived COVID-19 without having technology to help us there. But he said, think about singularity. Most people think about us creating, robot overlords where it's not going to be that. It's not going to be a physical representation. Think of it more in terms of software, and think of it more in terms of companies, or a company, wank, wank, that has really that software capability to be able to keep us tethered, and we won't be able to live without it. So when the super, another book I love, let me get it. I'm a bookworm, by the way. And I love physical books. Is that funny? Even though I'm super into high tech, I love physical books. This is such a great book too, by Stuart Russell. He has such a great quote in here, and it is, it's spellbinding, because the whole thing is that what happens if we're successful? What happens if we're successful in creating a super intelligent artificial intelligence? Well, it would be the biggest event in human history, and perhaps the last event in human history. And it's not to be all doomsday, right? It's to be a realist and go, okay, if you are, think about, algorithms, computer programs. I don't know if you've, me back in the day, oh my gosh, I used to write BASIC. Isn't that a long time ago? Ooh, that's dating back.
So did
I was writing BASIC back in 1983. But the computer program, think about the purpose of it, is that you have an end goal. And so this program is trying to get to the end goal. Well, if you have an algorithm that iterates on itself, it's trying to get to its end goal in the shortest, most efficient manner possible. Problem is, we're talking about an algorithm. We're not talking about anything that has any sort of sense of morality, and the end doesn't justify the means. And just because it's a quicker route to achieve the goal this way may not be the best goal for humanity to achieve it that way. So a lot of what he talks about in his book for programmers, if you're a programmer or engineer out there, I highly recommend this book, because he really talks about how we have to re-engineer how we're asking intelligence to meet its goals. And I think that's a really interesting question, because, one of the things I think, because I don't want to leave everyone with thinking that I'm all gloom and doom, right? But it's really, I'm not entirely negative on AI, and I love AI, and I love technology, and I especially health tech, because my background, is healthcare. But I am also, I can't ignore what, Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, and others, have been warning us about, the dangers, inherent in giving up our control. And it's not like there's a plug out there where when things spin off in a direction we didn't really intend, that we can just simply unplug the device. Right. It doesn't work that way. So what I'm passionate about is not leaving the decisions of technology and development on, in the deployment of tech on companies that actually, stand to gain financially by just unleashing it without considering the consequences of unleashing that technology on the human race.
Right. Their priorities may be different from the others as well. They might not be consistent.
Well, it's a conflict of interest, right? Mm-hmm. So if I come up with a brand new invention or a brand new product, and I stand to make the money from it because I came up with it, it's all this first to market stuff. But first to market is dangerous. Right. And I think one of the reasons why so many people aren't involved in the conversation is a couple of reasons. I think they feel just inadequate to be able to have the conversation, or they're hoping somebody else will take care of it. That's a really bad one to bet on. But I think what we have to do, and what I really am passionate about and committed to doing, is making this a mainstream conversation for everybody. Because if we don't make this a mainstream conversation, we're never going to get the policy, the regulations. We're never going to get past the fact that only a select few will be making these decisions for us. And to me, I think that's dangerous.
Right.
So I think technology for good, number one. I think there's a lot of really wonderful things that technology can do for us. I think there's so much that artificial intelligence can do for us. I think in marketing, you can reach people the way they want to be reached, where they want to be reached, about what they want to be reached about. And I think that's lovely, because how many of us are annoyed with, I'm not interested in that. And who likes pop-up ads? Not me. And, just think of the things that we can do with cancer and eliminating pain and suffering from the human race with technology. But it's naive of us to think that it's all good. Where there's light, there's shadow. And so we need a lot of really conscious people out there taking a look at, instead of being first on scene, first to market,
Right.
it's really, what are the implications long term? And let's look at, is this truly a benefit for humanity? Or are there things here that, could be used for not so good purposes?
It almost sounds like those automated trading programs.
Oh, yes.
In the world, and then you're saying it's more of a, broader scale, similar thing that could happen where something's unleashed, because and maybe it doesn't have the right checks and balances, and it just goes,
Right.
kind of spreads on its own, and the people, maybe there's no one to stop it, or it can't be stopped.
Well, I am an investment and trading buff. So back in the late 90s, during the heyday in Silicon Valley, I got involved in doing a lot of day trading, and it was fun back then. But when you think about, you just brought up something really juicy, because when you think about artificial intelligence and these financial transactions and in that industry, you can imagine how one transaction going completely awry can just think of the devastation in the market and how it could just wreak havoc, within the markets. And so it's a little bit scary. And then you also look at, if AI gets really good in the trading market, well, first of all, for me, it's somebody like me, it's like, well, then it's going to take all the fun out of it, right? Because there's a lot of fun in your charts and predictions and doing those things. But then, doing it against AI that can compute and see so many things that I can't, it sort of takes, because trading has been kind of a game, and it won't be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a question, if we take it back to marketing for a second, there's a question about marketing. When do you foresee companies starting to look for their marketing staff to know this new technology? Or do you see a niche of people who jump into learning this now so that they become more in demand for the near future? So it's kind of
that's a smart question. Well, marketing, I have a heart for marketers, because marketing is an extraordinarily difficult position to be in. When things are going well in an organization, usually marketing is not credited. But when things are going bad in an organization, usually marketing is credited. So, and you look at the role of a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, it's really short if you look at the average time that a CMO is within an organization. And not trying to ask you how long you've been where you are, Tom, but
right.
I'm just kidding, but no, I mean, it's a great question. Huh? Yeah, no, but it's a great question, because honestly, to look at the future of marketing and to look at the future of marketing leadership, the time is now to start getting familiar with these things, so that you're poised and ready. Because here's the problem, I think, with a lot of marketing leaders, is that there's so much pressure that most marketing leaders have this myopic focus on this quarter that we're in, right?
And what they know now.
Exactly. But unfortunately, that short-sightedness is dangerous, because, not only, yes, you have to care about this quarter, you have to care about where you're heading for end of year, True, but you also need to future cast for your own role, for your own position, to take that power seat at the executive table, to be able to talk to them about the technology that you have that isn't working or that you don't have and you really need, but also to begin to start to conceptualize how there is this evolving and changing role with who owns the customer relationship. And it's all good and well right now that it's, so vogue for the brand to talk about owning the customer relationship. Okay, fine, but that's not going to be your job security 5 years from now. It'll be, did you do what it took to become, to create that relationship with those platforms that have the devices, those digital assistants, with your target market, so that your products and services are the ones that are being offered, and being, bought and chosen. So it's a great question because it's still murky. That's true. But, this is the life I lead as a futurist. I live in murky. But if you're not willing to start to look at what is not here, you've got to cast that knowing glance around the corner. And that's what great leadership entails. Whether you are a great CEO or a great CMO, great CIO, it doesn't matter. To be a great leader in this world, innovation is more than lip service. Innovation means being willing to look at what's not there, but what could be there and is around the corner. And so it's a good question. Start educating yourself now.
Great. So let's look at digital assistants. You talked about them. How do you see them evolving over time? And we talked a little bit about that, but if you could fill in.
Getting smarter, right? So, right now they're not so smart. I like the other evening in my kitchen, it was like maybe a week or two ago, my daughter asked Alexa to play a song, because we were in the kitchen cooking and we love to jam out to music during kitchen cooking time. And Alexa repeated back, not the song she had requested, but another song. And it had all these explicit lyrics in there. And so my mom's in the kitchen and it's like all of a sudden, we're talking super explicit lyrics. We're like, wait, Alexa, stop. But so, it's still not perfect, but it's because the technology isn't where it needs to be yet. So, no, I don't rely on Alexa right now. I can set a timer with it, but I don't even rely on it to play the right music sometimes. But what I'm saying is that technology contained within there isn't going to stay that way. Look at the Tesla vehicles, right? So this is how it's going to work when people even think of robotic assistants. Each device, each robot, each car doesn't come a blank slate and then learn from you, learn your habits, learn that. No, what it does instead is it's connected into the mothership somewhere, right? So I have a Tesla, and when it's plugged in, it's literally taking all that data and information from the drives I've been on, and it's uploading that to the mothership. And then all the other Teslas in the universe are also uploading all their data. And then now it's coming down into my vehicle. Now it would be coming down, all the other Alexas out there into this one. If you have a robotic assistant, it's also going to be connected into something that's also infusing it with all knowledge and information from all the other robotic assistants. And so these things that we have are going to become more exquisite as they learn from one another, right? So they're not just learning from themselves or you, they're learning from all of them. And so as this, again, requires a lot of processing speeds, right, to do, we're going to see that with 5G. We're going to see that with technologies that are coming into being. And it's going to enable all of these devices to become smarter, more responsive, more personalized. But they're not going to be dependent on just learning from us. They're going to be connected in.
It's like Waze, how everyone uses Waze in big cities, and everyone's, I don't know if it feeds everyone the same shortcut, but everyone's starting to know these shortcuts to these, unfortunately, sometimes smaller streets, but yeah.
It's awesome. And not only that, but Waze has saved me from getting traffic tickets because I like to drive fast. And it tells me when there's a police officer. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, they're right. Can't believe I just said that, but hey, you know what? I'm
You're
not
being-
driving right now. I can say that. But no, I think Waze is really cool. And it's a great example of how a system can take data and information from all over and, bring it to you where you just happen to be. Yeah.
Yep. And by the way, the person who asked the earlier question, Peter, said, longer response, but end of the question is, nonetheless, I'm all game for the fourth industrial revolution. So here we are.
All right, Peter, but you got to help me out here. We gotta keep people in check. I see another question in here. I just glanced because all I could see, Tom, was the word RN. So I immediately I'm like, yeah, read it for me.
So it's I'm an RN that most recently worked for a major healthcare provider as director of program performance. I know there's a planned collaboration to provide augmented human customer experience when members are calling for help. AI prompts the human, and AI is successfully used in radiology. Do you see AI providing assistance with real-time clinical assessments in the near future?
Yes, I do. And again, the key word here to underline from your brilliant question, by the way. Oh, and I love RNs. I just love nurses. So the key piece here is real time. And to have this real time is where we need increased processing speeds and decreased latency, right? That creates that real time. And we're not talking near real time, we are talking real time.
Right.
And so the author of this question is absolutely right. I would trust AI to read my radiology reports much more than I would a human. Because the problem with, and I love doctors as much as I love nurses, but a doctor, she might miss something if she's tired, right? She was up late last night. Her kid was up sick. Her parents are sick. I don't know. But you see the human. Yeah. The human component here is that we are fallible. And when it's your mammogram or my mammogram or your chest x-ray, my chest x-ray, we want it to not be fallible, right? We want it to be precise. And so I think AI is absolutely gifted at this. And then you can have a human radiologist where, she then takes that information and works out the human patient plan to that. But, having AI provide these, I'm reading it here, providing real-time clinical assessments is key. Think about with COVID. We are putting our healthcare providers at risk. Imagine if you could screen people without having to put a human being at risk. Even in China, where they had people stationed at the doors of retail centers where they run your temperature, make sure you weren't wearing a fever before you came in. You're still putting that person at risk. I think with AI, you don't need somebody swiping your head for your temperature. Everybody would be walking around with a temperature on their head, right?
Right.
And so this is where I think not putting human life at risk is important. And certainly with a global pandemic, it would be nice to be able to have AI intervene in real time.
To your point, if you're a temperature that wasn't acceptable, it actually sensed that and wouldn't let you in the door, or it'd say,
That's right. Send you home. Yes. Yeah, you'd be like, you need to get home. You're not supposed to be out and about walking around with a fever, contaminating everybody. So, I think that one of the best uses of technology is for disease mitigation, treatment modalities, right? Because if you think about even with COVID, everybody was treating COVID patients differently. And it was, we do this here and it's not working, or the ventilators are, causing more damage. And what would be really interesting, as we know with artificial intelligence, is that it uses data and it takes all that data. And when you look at, right now we have all kinds of contingencies that mean we can't share all this information through the privacy issues. But say anonymized data, you could have all of that going into an artificial intelligence that says, hey, we have a higher efficacy rate of survival when we treat patients like this, this, and this. And when they show up like this, you do this. And So then we have all of these, triage treatment trees that AI can provide for us versus how slow the human component is, where we're getting some reports from this country and some from that country. And so I think the magic of technology is in support of human beings and not putting human life at risk when it doesn't need to be.
Right, just like a CDP does, kind of using AI to do segmentation based on all the data. You're saying in health, they could segment the different people based on their symptoms or history or things like that, and maybe there's different treatment options or different kind of priority for getting in to see a doctor or things like that. Interesting.
Absolutely, so much better than rolling the dice and going, well, we think this works.
Yeah.
Does anybody with cancer go, well, we're gonna try this chemo on you, but we're not sure. It doesn't work for everybody. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
The response to your answer was yes, reduction in risk and infallible readings was my thought behind the question. So great job.
Absolutely.
Quantum computing. So a question is, how will quantum computing affect this acceleration?
Oh, wow. So I'm going to guess that whoever wrote this question, you're with me on this. I think you probably know. You just want me to say it out loud, don't you? But if you think about, the quantum theory, quantum field, that, I don't know how deep we want to get into this, but that you can have all possibilities, right? And then we can jump into string theory too, which that will probably just completely annihilate everybody else on the call. But I think that quantum computing is absolutely going to be where we have to go to that next place in order for us to have the technologies that I was talking about, that we are going to need to be able to have that kind of computing capability. But at the same time, aren't you just a little bit curious about, once we have quantum computing, and, we have it, by the way, it's out there, but to the degree where it's ubiquitous and we're doing really well with quantum computers, we're going to talk about speeds that are so quick and so beyond human comprehension with multiple variables that, we aren't going to be able to catch up. And I think this is where, Stuart Russell in his book is talking about, it will be, if we succeed, if we're successful, it will be the greatest human achievement, but it could also be the last one. I mean, how do you stop it? Quantum computing, you're not pulling a plug, are you?
Right. The genie's out of the bottle.
So, but I want all of you guys to connect with me on LinkedIn, because these are the conversations that I want to be having, and I'm definitely going to be having starting school in a month. So I would like to keep this going.
And I think that question came from Peter again. He mentioned, so
Peter,
so we're having a variety of questions from a lot of people. So interesting one here. SQL. So is SQL Coding the Foundation for every AI ML position, or is it just the positions I'm reviewing? So this is more.
Wow. You are above my pay grade, my friend. I don't know. This is where this is why I'm getting my tail back in school. I'm nervous, but yes, I don't know the answer to that. I am also, admittedly, I think when you introduced me, I'm not an engineer. I'm a scientist, but I'm not an engineer. Very different.
Yeah, and I had one. Here's a good question for us about kind of the impact of workers on workers. So, what will AI replace, and then what do you think about the impact on workers?
Well, it's a great question. It is the question of, how many years now, and it needs to be the question that we keep asking, because, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and, we've talked about quantum computing, and, talk about genetic engineering and, nanotechnology and all of these things, is that, human redundancy will be eliminated, right? So a lot of the things that we currently do, we're just too slow at. And so I think, when you look at even automation replacing factory workers. It's a real issue. And from COVID-19, we know it has to be done, because when we keep all those human workers in the factory, then we don't have products when complete factories are shut down. And then everybody's freaking out because they want flour and they want sugar and they want toilet paper and hand sanitizer. So, and it's not just that. I mean, it was complex in the fact that the supply chain, you think about all the hospitals and institutions and restaurants that had institutionalized sizes of these things where they didn't need them anymore. And so the consumer size of products, they just didn't make enough. So I think it's just that we have to automate, right? We don't have a choice. To realize some of the things we want to realize, some of these cures for cancer and things like that, we're going to have to continue to evolve with our technology, which means that the technology itself is going to be faster than human beings. And I think we're going to have to think hard about what do we do with all the people who don't have the ability to, like our brilliant question asker here. I mean, how many people know, Sql coding? So can everybody do that? No, not everybody can. That person is incredibly brilliant. They can, but not everyone has the same abilities, not cognitive abilities, not emotional IQ abilities. And so I think we're going to see a displacement in workforce. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to pretend like it's not happening. What I do think we have to do, and we've seen this with our social unrest globally, but especially in the United States, is that this isn't going to bode well. People need work that's meaningful and real. And if we have populations of people who don't have jobs, who can't work, can't find jobs, we're in for some major problems. And so we do have to think about these things. There are important social issues at play here. And there are going to be a lot of jobs created. There will be, but not everybody can do those jobs. And not everybody's going to want to do those jobs. And those are for the social scientists to figure out, but it's a big problem. It's massive.
Yeah, that is a huge problem. One of the things that I've seen in the past is the combination of humans and machines is often better than just machines alone, right? So kind of the monitoring or assisting or adjusting. What are your thoughts on that combination?
Yeah, I do. I think it's so important. I think it's a human-machine partnership. I think it's using technology and machines in service to humanity, to making this a better place for human beings. I think that's a slippery slope, and it's a difficult walk, and we have to be really careful, because it's really great to manipulate things and make it look like it's so wonderful for humanity. It needs to be that it is. And, we have to look at the long-term effects of what we are accepting and doing. But, I do think that, one thing that human beings, at least for now, have that is so rich and not replaceable is that emotional intelligence, that empathy, that ability to care. And will we ever make machines that have that ability? Probably, but it's not going to be for a very long time. And so this is what we have. This is what we have to use: our creativity, our imagination, and these are the things. Like I said, even if we're augmented and we become super intelligent, it will never make us happy. We will never be satisfied. And it's those emotional components, that deep feeling of connectedness, of consciousness, of feeling a part of something bigger than yourself. And boy, haven't we seen this with shelter in place, that feeling of being with other people. People need people. Machines don't need that. We do.
What do you think about the future technologies and their their impact on security and privacy for consumers and marketers?
Oh, that's a huge one. Tom, we could do one just on security and privacy considerations with the future. It's huge. It's monumental. And there is no definite security solution. I mean, anything can be hacked and broken into. You think about, I have my side hustle hobby is writing sci-fi, and think about having a neural implant and having that hacked, having your brain hacked, and anything, all the information from your car, where you've been, where you're going, from your phone, from your apps, everything is already out there about you. Everything's already on, the dark web anyway. And you look at the young generation, Gen Z, they don't care about privacy. I was, before the pandemic hit, I was at Google in San Francisco and then Google in New York City within a span of 2 weeks. And we did, big event, and there were a lot of Gen ZEOs, so Gen Zers that had started companies, and they were doing all these panels and talks and things. But when it came to privacy, like, we grew up in a world where everything about us was already posted on the internet. There was no privacy. Look at all the pregnant women that post their sonograms on there. I mean, There's a digital footprint now before someone's even born, and they don't even get a choice about it. Look at all the Instagram posts about everybody's babies. Like, they're throwing a temper tantrum. Gosh, thank goodness there was no social media when I was growing up. But, for that generation, they don't think about privacy. They're like, it's already all out there.
What about the apps tracking their location or habits or friends?
They love it. They want to be personalized too. I don't know about, now see, I'm the other way, right? So I take, I have an iOS device, so I take tracking off, which means I have to turn it on if I want to use Waze, right? But then I don't turn it off just for the app. I turn it off for the whole phone. I don't use the facial recognition on my phone. I don't want that. I will put in my passcode. I will take the extra minute it takes to put in my passcode because I don't want that. Again, you see younger generations, swapping convenience for having all their information. And so, generationally, there are some differences there, but, I caution us to sell our birthright for a bowl of soup. I really caution us in what are we willing to give up for convenience? And is it worth it in the end? These are why I think these need to be mainstream conversations, because I think sometimes we accept technology just because it's going to make life easier for us.
Right.
What is it in the end? And what are we sacrificing? What are we giving up? Yeah.
No, great answer. So I think that's most of the questions. We still had a couple more coming in, but I think we'll wrap it here. And if you want to continue the conversation, obviously, please connect with me and Tamara on LinkedIn. There are links in the attachments tab where you can kind of connect with us and continue the conversation. And thank you again for joining us today. It was really interesting conversation. I actually learned quite a bit. And thanks for providing your insights into the future. Quick reminder to visit our Bright Talk channel where you can subscribe and view on demand upcoming webinars. And thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Tamara. Really, really.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being a part of this conversation, because that's what this is. It's an us. So we got to do this together. Thanks, Tom. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.